Welcome to this chapter on the brain and nervous system. In this chapter, we'll cover how the brain and nervous systems function. The brain and nervous system comprises of the brain, the spinal cord, nerves, and your sensory organs. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. It is the site of consciousness and all the functions that allow the human body to live, think, and create. Both the body and the brain are constantly alive, with billions of chemical and electrical signals occurring via a massive chain of neurons. The neurological or nervous system receives and transmits messages to and from the brain to all parts of the body. The neuron is the basic unit of the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. The network of neurons around the body allows signals to and from the brain to occur. The neuron consists of a cell body with central nucleus. Around the cell body are a large number of dendrites. These receive signals. Impulses are carried away from the cell body along the neuron in the axon. These spread out at the end and can be connected to further neurons. The axon is insulated with a myelin sheath. This series of neurons and nerves form the electrical circuit of the body, and the brain is composed of around about 12 billion neurons. The neurons interconnect together and make up the entire nervous system. The transmission of impulses along the nerve is affected at the connections between one neuron and another neuron, or one neuron and a receptor on an organ. At the terminal end of an axon or a dendrite, there is a synaptic knob. At this point, there is a small gap, which is called the synaptic gap. This is where chemicals, known as neurotransmitters, are passed over the gap. This is assisted by ions such as calcium. This allows the transmission of the signal from one neuron to the next. To fire a neuron, a stimulus must be received by the dendrites of the cell body. This is then converted into an ion charge that travels along the axon. At the end of the axon is the axon terminal. The gap between the end of the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of the next is called the synapse. At the end of the axon, the synaptic knob, a chemical is then released called a neurotransmitter. This travels through the synaptic junction, causing stimulation of the next neuron's dendrite, thus passing the nervous impulse along to the next neuron. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that communicate information around the brain and the body. They relay signals between the neurons to the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. There are two kinds of neurotransmitters: excitatory, which stimulate, and inhibitory, which calm and balance. Excitatory neurotransmitters include dopamine. Acetylcholine also works as an excitatory agent, except it works at neuromuscular junctions in the brain and the spinal cord. Inhibitory transmitters include serotonin and also dopamine, which works both ways. Let's have a look at the brain. The largest part of the brain is the cerebrum. This is a heavily folded surface which is different in each individual. Each area is called a lobe, and there are 4 of these. The frontal lobe deals with skilled movement, thought, and emotion. The temporal lobe recognises sound and also plays a part in memory. The occipital lobe detects and interprets visual images. And the parietal lobe perceives and interprets body sensations such as touch, temperature, pressure, and pain. Beneath the occipital and temporal lobe lays the cerebellum. This is the second largest part of the brain and it links to other parts of the brain and the spinal cord to facilitate precise, smooth movement and to control balance and posture. The brain itself has no feeling, yet all of your feelings are kept in your brain. Within the brain are a number of other areas. These include the thalamus and the hypothalamus. The thalamus is a structure which lies in the centre of the brain and acts as the brain's information relay station. The thalamus connects onto the brainstem, that in turn connects onto the top of the spinal cord. The brainstem is composed of the midbrain, pons and medulla. This area has nerve centres that regulate vital survival functions such as heartbeat, respiration, blood pressure, digestion and certain reflex actions such as swallowing and vomiting. The hypothalamus is small, about the size of a lump of sugar, but it has links with the autonomic nervous system and the endocrine or hormone system. It can adjust behaviour, internal functions and consciousness. Together with the lobes of the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus nuclei monitor and regulate body temperature, food intake, water-salt balance, blood flow, the sleep-wake cycle and the more important functionings of controlling the activity of hormones. The spinal cord transports sensory and motor information from other parts of the body to the brain and vice versa. The various nerves that emerge from the spinal cord pass through the vertebrae column and out into the dedicated areas of the body. Any damage to the spinal cord or nerves that can lead to temporary or permanent paralysis. For example, a broken neck paralyses all areas below the break. The autonomic nervous system is divided into three parts. These three are the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the third and less considered enteric nervous system that in part controlled the digestive organs. In general, the sympathetic system is involved with energy expenditure and body response, equivalent to the fight or flight response. The parasympathetic system is involved in energy conservation and digestion. Both systems are connected to a number of organs and structures.